protests that started over a rise in metro fares have provoked a state of emergency in Santiago. Students started the action 11 days ago, angry about a 4% increase in ticket prices. They found an audience in Chileans frustrated with a rising cost of living. The government blamed the fare rise on rising oil prices and a weaker peso. Protesters don't buy that and say their protest is a ticket to wider concerns about the economy. But it's becoming increasingly violent. On Friday, protesters forced the metro to shut entirely. The city estimates protesters have caused $700,000 worth of damage in more than 200 incidents. Mobs have been caught on street cameras descending on metro stations. Commuters have dodged tear gas and water cannon as police and protesters confront each other.
Now, over in Afghanistan, at least 62 people have been killed and dozens more injured in a bomb attack on a mosque. The blast, which occurred Friday in the country's eastern Nangarhar province, reportedly ripped the building's roof off. About 350 worshippers were inside at the time of the blast. No group immediately claimed responsibility, but the Taliban and the Islamic State group are active in eastern Afghanistan. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he strongly condemned the attack and stressed that those responsible must be held accountable.
Some action
cheering on the opposition benches.
That's it.
Order.
Go on, Boris. You'll let it feet to
The ayes to the right, 322. The noes to the left, 306.
Thank you.
The ayes to the right, 322. The noes to the left, 306. So the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Unlock. Order.
So there we have it. Meaningful vote delayed. We should be hearing from the Prime Minister almost instantly. Meaningful vote delayed. The Letwin Amendment passed by a majority of 16 votes. 322 voted for that for the legislation to be amended.
In any old election, there are winners and losers, but in Afghan elections, everyone wins. Well, at least they claim they do.
The results will be announced by the Independent Election Commission, but we have the most votes. We've been checking the results in the past few days, and we are sure we have the most votes.
The information that we have received showed that 60 to 70% of people voted for us.
Interestingly enough, they might both be right. The organization that oversees Afghan elections says over 1 million votes ended up fraudulent. That's roughly 40% of the entire ballot. And as if that didn't make these elections undemocratic enough, the ballot box turnout wasn't even 30%. Why?
Totally, we can count the reasons on 4 things. First, security threats.
He mentions a lack of voter trust in the election process, a tight schedule, thin budget, the media environment. But most importantly, he cites security threats.
Hillary Clinton is suggesting that Russians are grooming a 2020 Democratic presidential hopeful to run as a third-party candidate and spoil the race for the Democrats. Take a listen to her remarks in a new podcast from David Plouffe.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far.
Now, when asked if Clinton was referring to Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat of Hawaii, Clinton's spokesman said, quote, if the nesting doll fits. He added, quote, if the Russian propaganda machine, both their state media and their bot and troll operations, is backing a candidate aligned with their interests, that is just a reality. It is not speculation.
They are up against the political leadership that is clinging on to power, and they have used force to do that. Day 3 of protests, Lebanon's army and security forces are being accused of heavy-handed tactics, which are further infuriating demonstrators. They haven't left the streets, despite the crackdown and arrests. Their demands remain the same. The government should resign and early elections must follow. The response from the ruling alliance was clear.
We don't want the government to resign. If it does, it will take 1 or 2 years to form a new government, and the economic crisis will worsen, and it will be made up of the same political forces.
This is the site of Barcelona after several days of violent protests from Catalan separatists. These are the scenes faced by the Spanish Interior Minister, who came to Barcelona on Saturday to talk to the Catalan Interior Minister and to urge President Torra to take action. What President Torra must urgently do is gather and converge all Catalans, because what we have here is a problem of coexistence in Catalonia. He must be conscious of the fact that he is the president of all Catalans, and what he must do is sit down with all of them to re-establish coexistence. The last 5 days in the Catalan capital have been marked by some of the worst violence experienced there in decades. Over 100 people have been injured in the riots, many of them police officers. Grande Malasco visited some of them during his time there.
The UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in North Korea says he has obtained information that some North Korean defectors who are being held in custody in China have been forcibly repatriated. Speaking at an event in South Korea, Thomas Oheya Quintana said the UN will hold follow-up investigations, adding the defectors will likely be abused while in detention in North. He pointed out the need for discussions with Pyongyang on the North's human rights issues, stressing it's fundamental for the sustainability of any denuclearization agreement and for the durable peace on the Korean Peninsula.
James, give us your gut reaction to the news that 2 years ago, a pilot was instant messaging to somebody else at Boeing about how the safety system, this MCAS, was a disaster and was extremely hard to control back then.
Well, this is just a bullet to the heart of our regulatory system that has served the traveling public so well. And I applaud the FAA administrator's action, but I would urge him to go to Chicago, to Boeing, and demand that any documents related to the MCAS be made available to the FAA for immediate review, because it is obvious that documents have been withheld, and there has not been transparency as pertains to the safety of that aircraft.
A week out from the permanent closure of Uluru to climbers, and according to Parks Australia, only 15% of visitors choose to actually do the climb. These visitors are on a 2-day tour of the rock that takes them on a guided tour around Uluru's base, and the opportunity to see the rock's colors change with the light. Parks Australia says thousands of extra visitors have been visiting the rock in the months leading up to the climb's closure. But operators are confident the show will go on.